All right, back with you here. It's Sam. We are at mid-morning, Thursday, December 21st. I had another member that was interested in taking a look at the Enigma project. So here I've got a 1-hour chart of Enigma to Bitcoin. Now, in the interest of consistency, I'll take you back over to CoinGecko where we can look at this. Now, what's interesting about Enigma is that this is a very new project. So our genesis date is October 12th of 2017. Yet, amazingly, we're already above 50%, score of 50 here, which I always suggest is a good reference point. And you can see there's really a lot of development interest here. We're at 81 million in market cap, so we're still on the smallish side. But the fact that we're getting all of this interest in the strength in the project, interest in the project, is really unusual, particularly for a coin that's that new to the marketplace. So here, of course, here's a place where you can dig in if you'd like to learn a little bit more about the fundamentals behind this story. We go over to the trading exchanges just to get a handle on where the volume is. We can see that the bulk of it, well over 50% of it, is on Binance. So his symbol ENG to Bitcoin here, you can see almost 80% of the trading is to Bitcoin. There's no surprise there, but over 70% of it is on Binance. So anything that's trading on Binance for unknown reasons, TradingView is still yet to offer Binance data. So we have to go over to Coinigy, and we'll use the TradingView platform here, so it won't be that different to get a look at it. So first, let me put this in perspective. So let's go out to the 4 hours so you can see where we're coming from. So here's the ICO, this craziness, and then the long drift lower, and now it looks like we may be starting something meaningful. Now, this is a fairly good example of where the rule set that Elliott theory and Elliott trading enforces upon you can be a really useful set of tools with which to approach the market, because it forces you to make decisions and commitments based on that rule set that I propose to you are really meaningful and helpful. It'll keep you out of bad trades, and it'll position you for the best opportunities relative to risk reward. At least that's my proposal to you. Now, as we look here through this chop that eventually leads us to a low that we can work from, this here, you could probably squeeze out some sort of count on it, but I just think it's sideways. It's chopped. There's no structure to it. I don't think it really adds any value to what we're trying to do now. So what I see is this is the significant low. That's where we start to where we start to see some structure get established, and potentially now we have an impulsive wave that's underway here. So now, as I look at this, there's a couple of different ways you could count this. So I see a 1, 2, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 into a third here. It's really close, but I think that plays here. And I like that because I get an ABC here into my Vegas wave, and I do not overlap my 1 wave here. So I get a good 5-wave structure into what I believe, at least certainly at this point, plays as a 1 wave. I get an ABC into my 2. Okay, so if that's my 2, then I'm going to be tracking from my low here where I think the wave 1 is starting into my 2. Now it's relatively shallow, right? We don't quite make the 50. We essentially get a double bottom here at this prior shelf of resistance here. We find that support, but because we get this ABC, I think this holds as a 2. Now this is interesting here. If we're going to go into an impulsive wave, the fact that these pivots here hold by a few ticks, as I will often tell you, that doesn't happen by accident. So we have the potential now for this to be a third. This could be our third. This could be our fourth, although it looks incomplete. It looks to me like that's an A. We're trying to put in a B. So we're subject to relabeling here. This certainly could get relabeled. But right now, given the structure that we see here, and so here's the front run on the 50, we get right to the negative 618. That plays. We would want to check the length of 1 relative to where we just pivoted. So if we look here, There's the 100%. So we get through it just by a few ticks. So we get this little confluence zone up here where we've got the algo target and we've got our 100% so that we can, per Elliott rule set, we can call that a third wave as it's longer than the first. So, now the question is, does this hold here? So if this is a good 2, so let me pull some of this off since we have this marked off. If that's a good 2 and a good 4, so we're going to mark from our 2 up to our 3 high. And you can see we get, in a very, very common zone here. So here's the 50. So between the 50 and the 618, not overlapping that wave 1 high. That's the key to it. So this, again, does not happen by accident. So the buying comes in there to support that. Now the question becomes, are we complete here? Is this a complete ABC? So I'm going to go to the 15-minute to get a better look at that. So here's, the conundrum of this. So this very much to me looks like we've got an A wave in here. We get an A, B, C into a B wave. And then here's the question mark. So as I've mentioned in many prior videos, we are seeing all over crypto very consistently this shallow C wave, these truncated C's where we're getting this triangle pattern. And we don't violate any rules here by seeing this. It's unusual. It's the strength of the market. The C wave more typically would come down here. We'd expect it to be, at least challenging the 50 again, maybe the 618. Now we have our wave 1 high here. So this would be interesting if we were to come back down and challenge the 618, which is right here. Now, if we break this, well, then we got to consider relabeling, or we're going into a diagonal because we can't overlap in an impulse. So potentially now we could be seeing this kind of thing. So this triangle pattern that we've seen with these shallow C's. Now it's unusual. That's very. There's not a lot of subdivision to give you confidence in that C wave, but we've seen it so many times that we can't ignore it as a possibility. That we have an A, B, shallow C, and that this as a third. Let me go back to the hourly. That certainly is. It's a pattern that we're seeing. I don't love it because the C wave looks to me like it needs to come down here and at least get some subdivision. But we have seen it so many times such that if this breaks this triangle that we've got here, we could very well be off to the races yet again. So then we go up and potential targets here for a 5th. So too soon to really call it. It's. For me, that's not enough. That's not enough. I don't love it enough to be, jumping into this trade. I like the project. It's really amazing to me how well they're doing relative to how short amount of time they've been in the market. But as a trader, I need to get more structure to that C wave before I get confident putting money. Now, I would love to see a double bottom here. That would be. So then we something along those lines. That looks better to me, I'd be comfortable if this would violate the count. So as a trader, we could look here and be buying down in this range, knowing that I don't need to give this a whole lot of room. So I like the risk reward. I mean, you can really be tight there. So potentially we could turn into a diagonal. This could be a diagonal on a much larger degree. So nothing prevents that. We would just be changing. We'd have a 1, 2, 3. If we overlap here, then we get a leading diagonal into a 1 wave on the assumption that 1 is leading us to much higher prices. So for me, I wait. I want to see what happens. I want to at least get a visit back to the 50, and I want a little more subdivision into that C wave. Even if I'm down to, if I have to go to the 5-minute, I just want to see a 5-wave subdivision in there before I get overly anxious to jump into a C wave that just doesn't look to me like it's finished. I mean, we're seeing it, but for me, that's just not enough there yet. So not to belabor the point, but I don't see it yet, but I certainly like the project and I like the potential long term. I want to see what happens down here. It's going to be interesting as we're getting weakness in Bitcoin today. Who holds? Who can sustain that? So potentially this 4 comes over here. And as I would always do, we'd get a pitchfork on this just to get a handle of what the geometry looks like. So if that's a good 1, down for a 2. On it there. Let's get. There we go. You know, I like it a whole lot. I like it a whole lot over here. I like that structure. I've got just what I look for here. If we double bottom here, if this provides the support, you know, it would be ideal to get in here and not overlap that 1. Then I know my count is good. I know my pivots are good. If I break it, well, it still doesn't doesn't invalidate the bullish upside potential. Just we have a diagonal. Right, so, you know, I always prefer to trade an impulse wave where we don't get that, where we hold this. But if it's a 1 wave and I go, okay, well, that tells me I'm in a 1, I've got a leading diagonal, that all plays. It's going to affect where I'm going to look to entry on my second wave. But, you know, it's certainly one to be watching. This is an interesting project. There's opportunity here, so one to keep an eye on. I'd have alerts at the 50 and at this swing high just to see if we get a reaction there, assuming we get down there. All right? Okay, I'll wrap it there.